just fell into my bookshelf. That really fucking hurt.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shaki, and today we're going to be talking about some of the books that I read in November. In the month of November, I managed to read 6 whole books, baby! And I'm going to be talking about my thoughts, what they're about, and my Goodreads rating. First book that I managed to get read in the month of November was One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This is about 5 kids who all go to detention together and only 4 of them come out alive. And this story is basically all of the kids who were in the room trying to figure out, as well as the detectives, who killed Simon, the person who died and obviously didn't make it out alive, and who is guilty and who is innocent. So I actually gave this a 3 stars on Goodreads because I didn't really enjoy it as much as everyone thought I would, or as much as everyone else. So I gave this a 3 stars because I literally predicted the plot twist that happens right at the end from page 50. It seemed to drag out more because I already knew what was happening and the characters didn't know, and I was just kind of waiting for them to catch up. I did enjoy in the fact that it kind of reminded me of like a twisted version of Gossip Girl with more up-to-date storylines like abusive boyfriends and like gun laws and like suicide and stuff like that. It was okay, it had some really good elements. I feel like the character development was really good in this book. There's a gay storyline, although we're not like expecting a whole like gay representation or like a gay story. This has LGBTQ in it. Moving on to the next book that I read in November, I Still Love You by Jenny Han. This is the second book in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy, written by Jenny Han. So I read To All the Boys I've Loved Before, the first book in the trilogy, because of the Netflix movie coming out, and I read the book, then watched the movie, and for me that is the order that I love to do it in, because if I do it the other way around, I see things in the book that I shouldn't, and things just aren't right in my brain. So with the first book, I read it and then watched the movie, and I adored it absolutely. From my head to me toesies, I enjoyed it. So toesies, who the fuck? I enjoyed it basically. They're just carrying on from that story from To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Obviously I can't say too much about this plot because it spoils the first book, but basically this whole trilogy is about Lara Jean, who writes love letters to the people that she's loved before. She'll be too scared to say what she actually truly feels about this person, so she'll write them a love letter and put it in a hat box. And she's just this shy American Korean girl, and she's so lovely, and I love Lara Jean so much, and it was such a pleasure reading her. And that sounds really dirty. But unfortunately, however much I enjoyed being in Lara Jean's shoes again in her hectic little life, the first one, unfortunately, I liked a little bit more. So I gave this a 3.75 on Goodreads for the following reasons. I feel like Lara Jean gets a little bit too overprotective of Peter in this book, with reason, of course, with rational, logical reason. I feel like it goes a little bit step too far, and I don't feel like it is challenged, and I feel like I am so sick of like women in the media being like, you can't talk to anyone but me, you can't go to your friends, you can't play the game because you're going to be cheating on me. And although Lara Jean doesn't go to this extent, you can see her motives, and you can see the fact that she's getting quite not manipulative, but like it's becoming unhealthy, and I feel like it's never challenged, and that's one of the reasons why I like the first one better, because there's none of that in the first book. I also am not a huge fan of love triangles, and I know that's really like rich of me to say after saying I've enjoyed the series so far, but I can only take a few love triangles. Like the first one I could take, but it seems like every single one of these books is going to follow a formula, and there's going to be a triangle with Peter in it somehow. It's getting quite repetitive, and I think that's one of the problems I have with this book. Don't get me wrong, Jenny Han writes contemporary like no one else, and I read these so quickly and I enjoy them, but that is just something that's kind of ticking at my mind a little bit. Is this series going to have this formula of the same plot just with different elements? If so, we're not going to have a fun time by the end. The next book that I read in November is a reread, and that is Looking for Alaska by John Green. This is neither my favourite edition that I own, and it's not the edition that I read this time in, but it is the less reflective one of the 3 of them that I own. So I decided to just kind of showcase this one. If you didn't know, I'm going to be hosting something called the Greenathon in 2019, where we discuss and read all of John Green's books in the months of 2019. And obviously Looking for Alaska is part of that. So if you want any more details, I'll leave the answer video and the Twitter down below, because if you like this, you'll like John Green's books, and therefore you can participate in the readathon. Readathon is for anybody. You could have never read a John Green book before, you could have read them all 10 times, Not looking at me. Anyway, so this John Green book, Looking for Alaska, is my favourite book of all time. I have a tattoo which conveniently you can't actually see. Looking for Alaska is about a guy called Miles who goes to a boarding school and he meets loads of new friends, and including one called Chip, who is the Connell. I can't say his name still. It's been fucking 4 years and I still can't say his name. He meets Chip and earns the nickname of Pudge, even though he's really skinny, and that's where his ironic nickname comes from. So Pudge, aka Miles, kind of like rides through boarding school, not really thinking that anything's gonna happen until he gets dumped into a lake and shit fucking changes. Pudge meets his match, well, not his match, but he likes her a lot and he can't have her, and I think that's the story of every teenager's life. He meets Alaska, his match, his one to be with, but will they or won't they? Alaska has a lot of complications to do with her mental health, her lifestyle. She's unemotionally unavailable, and Miles just can't really seem to fit in. There's a lot of mystery, heartbreak, pranks, oral sex with toothpaste, but we won't go into that. There's a lot of fun and mystery if you love that kind of thing. If you love YA, you'll love this book because it is one of my favourites, and I hope that I've sold it, and I hope you're in another tab right now. Book Depository, Magic Music Pile, whatever it's called, Wordery. Order this fucking book and read it because it is incredible and I love it so much. Obviously, 5 out of 5 stars, top notch. I don't really need to say anything. All of the Goodreads reviews of these will be down below. Moving on, the next book that I read in November is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. So I gave this a 3.9 stars, very, very specific, but I thought this was a very interesting and unique read. I thought the writing was incredible. Like, Erin Morgenstern has a style that I don't even, oh my god. There were some problems with it, and before I say those, let's remember to tell you what it's about. This is basically about the Night Circus, and it is about two men who come together, not really come together, but they're kind of like enemies, like they're opponents, that's what I was trying to say. They're opponents in this game, in this like kind of thing that they've created for each other. And one day, one of the illusionists sees the other illusionist, the two men, and says, "Your illusions are fake. This is not what the circus is about." So they agree to have two subjects or participants in their little psychological study thing, and they have this game where it's really tragic and their two participants are basically fucked if they ever meet, if they ever come in contact. The two subjects are called Marco and Celia. Celia is actually the illusionist's like daughter. They are both in this game and they don't actually realise it, and they're like, they meet, they have some really moments that make you tug on your heartstrings, well, supposed to, not really personally, but I'll get into that in a minute. It's just tragic, and they're in the circus, and loads of things are happening with the circus, and there's so many different plot points that it is a bit hard to keep up. We have both of the illusionists with their subjects. We have the actual subjects, Cecilia and Marco. Then we have the twins that are born, and we also have, what I can remember, is Jamie, who is currently going to run away. So there's a lot going on, and I'm sure I've missed loads as well with that. From what I can tell, I don't like circus books, and it really isn't fair for me to keep on picking up these circus books and thinking, I'm gonna like this one, when I know that I'm not going to. It isn't fair on me and my reading experience, and my time is wasted, and it isn't fair on the author either. I felt like Cecilia and Marco had no chemistry at all. I feel like they have nothing in common apart from the fact that they're both illusionists. They had no chemistry, and I just thought that they wanted each other because they couldn't have each other rather than they actually loved each other. And I feel like that wasn't the way I was supposed to read the characters, but I did, and I really just, I feel bad, but I don't. It just wasn't my cup of tea. It was good. I gave it 3.9 stars, and I just feel like I shouldn't pick up another circus book because it isn't fair. The next book that I got around to reading in November is quite a short one, and that is Gossip Girl. I still can't say this name. I'm gonna say Cecily von Zygsgar. So if you don't know the TV show Gossip Girl, they are based on books, and I think there are 10 books, 1 book per season, although I think they cross over because there were some bits from season 2 in here at the beginning. Basically, it is set in New York, and it is kind of like fly on the wall kind of thing with watching the Upper East Side and kind of living vicariously through Gossip Girl and her audience. So there are a lot of things wrong with this book because it is based on people who are rich, and I do feel like it could have been dealt a little bit better. There are quite a few content warnings that I want to just put out there. So there's a lot of bulimia, slut shaming, victim blaming, homophobic use of the word gay as an adjective, and sexual assault. The author of this clearly hasn't been a teenager for a while. You can definitely tell when some adults write teen fiction because they dumb their characters down, and I would take John Green's teen characters being more intelligent than teenagers actually are than this. All the teenagers do in this book is underage drink, get drunk, use drugs, and fail school while keeping their grades up, which doesn't really make sense. I feel like this could have been done better if it was written now, but I do appreciate that it was written quite a long time ago, and I'm expecting the books to please me more and more, but by Goodreads and their reviews, that ain't gonna happen. So I did give this somewhere between a 2 and a 2.5 stars, which seems really low because I love Gossip Girl so much. I literally love the TV show with all of my heart, but I feel like this really let me down because of the homophobic use of language, slut shaming, and just, oh, it was just awful. The 6th and final book that I'm going to be talking about today of my reads of November is something that I finished this morning, and that is Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. So obviously this is the second book in the Hunger Games trilogy. You know that if you haven't been living under a rock. In case you didn't know, obviously I can't say much because it is a second book, a sequel into a series, but this is basically all about Katniss, who finds herself volunteering for her sister in the Hunger Games, which is something that the capital, their corrupt government, has set up so that they are reminded for the sacrifices that they're kind of put into. Authority has given them kind of a false class consciousness. It's very much a political government corruption kind of novel, and I'm normally really into that. Like, I love the first book so much. But unfortunately, Catching Fire, although be it some people's favourite book in the trilogy, wasn't it for me, Chief. Like with To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy, I feel like this trilogy is also going through the same thing. There's a formula, you know, Katniss and Peeta are going to survive somehow, they're going to end up back in the games, there's going to be drama with Snow. You can kind of see it happen, and I feel like because I read the book after I watched the movie and I love the movie so much, I just can't get that out of my head, and I know everything that's coming, and I kind of just felt like I wasted my time a little bit, although the audiobook was amazing. Oh my god, this is just like the first one, but with different elements that are supposed to be exciting this time. I'm just like, eh. So those were all of the books that I managed to get read in the month of November. There were 6 of them, and my favourite was by far Looking for Alaska. But if we're going without rereads, I think my favourite was probably, then the highest I rated was P.S. I Still Love You. My least favourite probably Gossip Girl, which is the easiest to decipher between. So these are all the books that I read in November. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give myself a thumbs up. I make videos every single Tuesday on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week for another booktube video. Bye!
Snow is falling.